So, the title of my talk this morning is Memoirs to Memory. So, a memoir can be described as a record of events, one's personal life and experiences, written by a person having intimate knowledge of them and based on personal observation. So, I'm jumping off the word record here, a record of events. And in my mind, I go record, recollect, reflect, remind, remember. All of these involve memory. And memory has a very high value and function in Buddhist practice. The Pali term is Sati, S-A-T-I, and it's really a broad container for all of the English translations of awareness, mindfulness, recollection, reflection. So you'd think I was going to quote a Buddhist scholar and practitioner here, but instead I'm going to quote from an article sent to me by a member of our group. And she got it from her memoir teacher. And she said to me in her email, "Doesn't this relate to reflective meditation?" Yes, it does. It gave me a good fodder for my Dharma talk. So, by the way, I love it when people send me articles that from other fields that look like they relate to reflective meditation. And I'm developing a kind of resource list of some of those articles. So here's what I'm going to quote. Our memories form the bedrock of who we are. Those recollections, in turn, are built on one very simple assumption. This happened. But things are not quite so simple. We update our memories through the act of remembering, says Charan Raghunath, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at the University of California, Davis. And he's the author of a new book called Why We Remember. So it creates all these weird biases, memory does, and infiltrates our decision making. It affects our sense of who we are. Rather than being photo-accurate repositories of past experience, our memory functions more like active interpreters, working to help us navigate the present and future. The implication is that who we are and the memories we draw on to determine that are far less fixed than you would think. Our identities are built on shifting sands. So he's not a Buddhist, but he's talking about something that we would talk about within all of our teachings. And I'll just take pieces of it as I go along. He says this happened. So, and it's not so simple, that happened. And this really flies in the face of this common interpretation of mindfulness to be present here and now on only one thing, and again, which is a very focused and simple, though not easy, practice. But it tends to point people into a belief towards there being a present moment. And that's where everything happens, and they have to stay in that. And really not understanding that it's already the past, it's already happened, that present moment. That we're looking at something really different when we're talking about mindfulness, awareness, and memory. And there's a need for simplicity. So I do understand that development of that practice, but I appreciate his correlation of memory and who we are and the complexity of this process. Because when you really get that, you no longer can just kind of brush something off as a simple exercise. You have to investigate it more. It generates curiosity and really wanting to know more and understand more. So the fact that he also mentions that we update who we are by the act of remembering. We do this daily in our practice here. And we don't just jump over the sense of self that gets built from our memory. If you have a good memory, you tend to have a better sense of self. I know that as my memory is diminishing. So it's really something where we can again see the shifting and changing nature of who we are. But to illustrate the complexity, I'm going to touch on now a Buddhist practitioner, Stephen Batchelor. He's a scholar and practitioner. His current definition of mindfulness. To be mindful is to recollect. And here I'm going to insert my own series of re's. To recollect, remember, record, reflect, remind, that there is anything at all rather than nothing. And he gives an astonishing list of things that we can recollect or reflect or remember or record. That we live in a still expanding universe with 200 billion galaxies, that we have a complex relationship with ourselves, with others, with communities, with animals, with plants, that we have a past and a future, and we live in bodies and we have minds. I'm paraphrasing here. He has, like, his is like 10 pages. And that there is the death of all these things. So that's a lot of things to recollect. We need many memory sticks. You'd have to write a few memoirs, and maybe it's why memoirs are so exquisitely painful to write, is because you're having to collect so many things from pieces of just one life. So, and I can feel, even as I was writing the talk, like I just wanted to slow everything down. Like, this is too much. Don't say so much. How do I simplify this? And I think that might be a reason why we do try to slow things down and focus on one thing at a time and call that a kind of mindfulness, rather than all of this being aware of the complexity and how many things there are that we are actually coming in contact with every moment. So I'll point to another place in his paragraph that will help slow me down a little bit. Rather than being photo accurate repositories of past experiences, our memories function more like active interpreters, working to help us navigate the past and the present and the future. So I think of this active memory process. You know, it's not something we're just subject to. It's something we're co-creating, we're involved with. And in the 80s, I was, since the 80s actually, I've been doing a Tai Chi and Qi Gong practice. And there's a movement within the practice called Gathering the Stars and Moving the Big Dipper. And I remember every time I did that movement, I would think of like the larger universe and where I am and just the small bit of dust or personhood that I have. But I noticed over time that when I was doing movement along with thinking, that I really wasn't getting too far. I was just going over the same old stuff. So for me, I had to bring in a stillness practice, and I had to settle the body and let it lay down or sit for my mind to actually get to some of the more subtleties that I could see in my mind in the active processes. And some of my more unconscious and unintentional, what I felt were unintentional motivations and values, they seemed to become more apparent when I sat the body down and calmed it and relaxed it. Your arc may be a little different. I don't think this is true for everyone. That's the direction I went. So as a tribute to blending our worlds, seeing the interconnection of reflective meditation and a lot of things, I'm going to end with his words today. I think of memory more like a painting than a photograph. There's often photorealistic aspects of a painting, but there's also interpretation. As a painter evolves, they could revisit the same subject over and over again, paint differently based on who they are now. We're capable of remembering things in extraordinary detail. but we infuse meaning into what we remember. We're designed to extract meaning from the past, and that meaning should have some truth in it. It also has some knowledge, imagination, and sometimes wisdom. So I'll end my talk here. We'll